Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm gonna start a new series, What If Naruto's Dimension Was Invaded by Yoru, Part 1. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
All I could see when I looked around was darkness. I could feel nothing around me, so it wasn't cold or warm. I was only a soul, with no body to speak of. But I had so many questions in my head. What brought me here? Which location was this? I was alone, why? Could I go now? Will I be trapped here? My surroundings started to change. My surroundings started to feel different as I considered a way to kill myself, again as it seemed. I was no longer surrounded by the cold, emotionless darkness but by some warmth and what felt like viscous fluids. I felt my surroundings contract, and I could feel my body being pushed or pulled in the direction of a light that was getting closer. You've spent time in a bed. Your HP and CP have returned to full health. I awoke with a gasp for air, my shirt clinging to my perspiration-covered, damp skin. Time has seemed to blur around me ever since the day, or night, I couldn't remember. I was born. The last 3 to 4 years seemed to have passed in a dream, and I had trouble recalling what had happened then. The strangest thing was that I felt as though a veil had been lifted from my mind and I was now beginning to understand what life was all about. I decided it was safe to assume I was either dreaming, hallucinating, or this was somehow real because I could still see the blue box hovering above my head after my internal monologue. It was interesting to me that while I could recall the floating characters as being something I had seen or read about in the past, I was unable to recall how the previous 3 or 4 years had been for me. In fact, I had trouble recalling my activities from yesterday. I shook my head at those ideas and concentrated on my current predicament. Up until this morning, my memory seemed to be, for lack of a better word, fuzzy, but I had a skill that was uncannily reminiscent of a video game, and best of all, I was able to recall some strange information about anime. Why would I need to understand anime unless I was put in a situation where it was required? You gain +1 int and +1 whiz for correctly assessing your circumstances right after waking up. Okay. Assess your predicament and ascertain your location first. Finding out who I am and where I am would be the best way for me to begin. I gave it some thought. If this is like a game in any way, then. Status, the name Yoru, a human being. Next level, 0-200s level, LVL1. 300-300s HP, 3 per minute region 200-200 CP region, 2 per minute. CC, 20% STR, 4 VIT, 5 dex, 3 int, 10. Whis. 9 ENGY. 30 points Rio. 1000. The fact that I had not known my name before this and that I seemed to be less than fully human indicated that was mildly unsettling. Beside my race. But those were minor issues in comparison to the situation at hand. To understand what they all meant and to get a sense of where I was, I clicked on the statistics. Attributes HP, or hit points. The number of hits, or damage you can take before your body shuts down and you essentially die is determined by your HP. You can inflict more damage and survive longer in this world if you have more HP. This formula is used to determine hit points. Vitality *50, plus base HP, 50, CPs, chakra points. Every person on the planet has a unique center of life energy called a chakra, which is a flexible and potent type of energy. Every technique depends on it, and it can be controlled and manipulated to produce effects that are otherwise impossible. In order to determine chakra points, use the following formula. ENGY *50, plus base CP, 50, CC, chakra control. Your ability to control your chakra affects how much or how little chakra you lose while using a technique. For instance, a CC value of 20% indicates that you waste 80% of your chakra when using techniques and that you need to use 5 times as much chakra as you otherwise would to achieve the same result. STR. Strength. The person's overall physical strength is determined by their strength attribute. With taijutsu, kenjutsu, bladed weapons, or blunt objects, a person's ability to harm another person is influenced by this quality. It also has an impact on how much weight they can throw or lift. An adult human with no prior chakra training typically has a STR stat of around 10. Vitality, VIT. The vitality attribute determines a person's general state of health. This characteristic also has an impact on a person's capacity to heal themselves between battles and their resistance to certain types of damage, such as poison, chakra draining, paralysis, burns, etc. An adult human with no prior chakra training has a VIT stat of roughly 10. Flexibility. Dex. The person's overall movement is determined by their dexterity attribute. In close, medium, and long-range combat, this trait affects a person's accuracy, evasion, speed, and capacity for critical strikes against an adversary. Pickpocketing, stealth, the proper use of weapons, and the ability to dual-wield effectively all depend heavily on dexterity. An adult human with no prior chakra training typically has a dex stat of around 10. Intelligence. Int. This attribute describes a person's general capacity for quick thought and creativity. Their intelligence is also affected by it, as it has an impact on their capacity to learn, memorize, and retain information. An adult human's int stat is typically around 10. Knowledge. Wis. Common sense and perception are determined by a person's wisdom attribute. In addition to learning specific skills like genjutsu and medical ninjutsu, wisdom is crucial for defending against mental attacks. An adult human's Wis stat typically ranges from 10 to 15. Power. ENGY. The energy stat, which determines how much energy a person has, can be improved through training. Increases in the energy stat will increase your chakra pool because the energy in this world is represented by chakras. I took a look at the data and thought, interesting. I could only possibly be in high school DxD and Naruto, the only two worlds I could think of that had chakra. Since humans didn't use chakra in that series, I highly doubt I was in high school DxD. Didn't indicate that I was a partial Yukai. The only other logical conclusion was that I was a 4-year-old trapped in the Naruto universe. I sighed and got to my feet while trying to come up with a strategy. I had time to train because I was young, but the problem was that I had no idea what country or period of time I was in. I might have been in a small, uninteresting region of the elemental nations, but I wouldn't know unless I came out of my room. I paused to really assess my surroundings. There were many children sleeping all around me in the room, which was quite big. I could only guess where I was based on that and the fact that all of those sleeping forms were resting on beds. Either my family was extremely wealthy or, with my luck, I was living in a well-funded orphanage. Although I tended to lean more toward the former, this was still somewhat of a good thing since a well-funded orphanage that could afford beds for every child could only be found in a wealthy area. You receive +1 int and +1 wis for using amazing deductive reasoning to comprehend your situation. I rubbed my temples as I thought about what I should do next. I mentally compiled a list for my last-minute strategy. Identify the nation I am in. Work out to become stronger. Pending. My nose's bridge was scratched. This is going to be a long day. After one of the orphanage caregivers roused the dozing children, I had at last found my way to the dining table. I was thinking about a training schedule as we were all eating breakfast at a large dining table. I had so much at my disposal that there was no way I was going to live a life of mediocrity. I had to find a way to go outside and work out. I couldn't really work out without getting caught anywhere in the orphanage. Even so, I doubt that it would be a problem if I started exercising in the house. Just that if I started acting differently than how I was typically perceived, I wouldn't want to arouse suspicions. Yoru-kun. I looked at her for a moment before turning to face the distraction. She had short black hair and dark blue eyes, which made her look cute in a childish way. She seemed to be about 5 years old. I caught a glimpse of some dull glowing words hanging above her head. Orphan MELVL 1 rep 15 inches, can I help you? I inquired. She responded with a cute pout on her face. Remember when I asked you to play ninja with me at the park later today? Yeah, I did say something like that. No, I didn't remember, but perhaps I could use this opportunity to better understand who I am. The black-haired girl turned and walked away, appearing content for the time being. She appeared to remember something immediately after that and turned to face me with a smile that said, I'm laughing at your misfortune. Also, Miss Iami requested that I kindly remind you that today is your day to assist with dishwashing. Who was Iami, anyway? Ping. Mission alert. Club Clean Plate. The matron of the orphanage, Miss Iami, requests, demands, your help with the cleanup after breakfast. Show her your incredible plate cleaning prowess and make sure no stains remain. Prizes. 25 XP. 1 stat point. Reduces rep with Miss Iami after failure. Regardless, you'll probably have to repeat them. Are you agreeing? Since the N button was disabled in the game, I didn't have many options to choose from, so I consciously agreed to the quest and started clearing the table. I moved toward the kitchen carrying the gathered dishes when I spotted an older-looking woman washing the dishes in the sink. I observed some other orphans and caregivers pitching in where they could. I lingered in the area awkwardly shifting for a while before the woman washing the dishes noticed me because I wasn't really sure what they wanted me to work on. Yusaka Ayami, Myron of the orphanage LVL 15. Representative 20. I have a few other things that need my attention, Yoru, so please be a good boy and help me with these dishes. After finishing up, she stepped away from me and I went to the sink on my own. She left me to handle delicate items on my own, which gave the impression that I was trusted enough to do so around here. While I washed the plates, I sighed slightly in relief. So far, it appears that no one has really picked up on anything odd about my behavior, or if they did, they chose not to confront me about it. My thoughts began to stray to the exterior of this house. The orphan matron would be taking the orphans to the park or something if that girl Emmy was telling the truth. I would have the chance to get acquainted with my surroundings because of this. I kept cleaning the dishes while having these thoughts and made sure I could, at the very least, see my reflection on the dishes. Bite me, I was a neat freak. Ping. Quest is finished. Club clean plate. Prizes. 25 XP. 1 stat point. Status, the name Yorodon. A human being? Next level. 25 200s level, LVL 1. 300 300s HP. 3 per minute region 200 200s CP region, 2 per minute. CC. 20% STR. 4 VIT. 5 Dex. 3 Int. 11. WIS. 10 ENGY. 3 1 points Rio. 1000. After everything was set up and completed, I took a moment to unwind and think about how this system worked. I should have the fundamental skill set that came with the package if this was similar to the gamer mechanics I was familiar with. Skills. Ability list. Gamer's mind intensity, 90% passive. Enables the user to reason things through calmly and logically. Enables a calm state of mind. Gives protection from the impact of psychological status. The degree to which gamer's mind affects your emotions depends on the intensity level. While an intensity of 0% restores your emotional capability to its highest possible state, an intensity of 100% completely shuts off your ability to feel emotions. Warning. Due to your special situation, gamer's mind's intensity cannot be changed. 0-level gamer's body, passive, gives the user a body that enables them to experience reality as a video game. It recovers HP, MP, and all status effects after a brief nap. Enables you to quickly learn new skills and adjust to environmental stimuli. Your ability to speed up your healing is enhanced by training gamer's body. Your body is highly adaptable and constantly works to get better. Your body can fully repair itself to its ideal state while you sleep. 0% more rapid regeneration of CP and HP. As I reviewed my abilities, I hummed in my head. Why I hadn't yet had a mental breakdown was answered by gamer's mind. Most people would go insane waking up in an unfamiliar and dangerous environment with hazy memories and knowledge, so I was grateful my mind wasn't damaged. However, it was novel to have control over how much an impact gamer's mind has on me. I wouldn't have to constantly act like a root ninja, and this would definitely help me when I need to control my emotions. The gamer's body skill, however, was the most intriguing thing. It not only had a level that I was unfamiliar with, but this ability even gave me a better ability to pick up new skills and adjust to stimuli. It probably meant that the more I was exposed to things like poisons and burns, the less of an impact they would have on me. This was even stranger than what I'd noticed with gamer's mind, but it seemed like I could get better at it indefinitely. I could make this work. My inability to change the level of my gamer's mind perk's intensity was the only thing that really bothered me, but I suppose the only thing I could do was wait until something changed. As Ayami returned from whatever errands she had been running, she said, "Thank you so much, Yoru, you did an amazing job. Why don't you clean yourself up before we leave?" I nodded and made a semblance of a smile before beginning to walk away. But as I was doing so, I noticed Ayami giving me a strange look, which made me feel uneasy. Had I erred in any way? What? No, it's just that I have never seen you smile before. I'm glad you're at least starting to open up, she said with a smile on her face after looking at me for a little while longer and seemingly finding what she was looking for. I paused to consider what she had said. Had I really been acting without feeling? What did I really look like before? I nonetheless continued to the restroom to give myself a quick rub. Although the bathrooms were spacious and had multiple shower heads, there was little room for privacy due to the large number of kids staying there. Before looking in the mirror, I went over to the sink to brush my teeth. To be completely honest, I hadn't even bothered to look at myself beforehand. My only knowledge of my appearance, like that of my name, was that I was a male. It was therefore like seeing myself for the first time when I looked in the mirror. My 3'7" frame was covered in light brown skin. On that note, I was taller than most kids my age, and based on the color of my skin, I deduced that at least one of my parents was from Kumogakure or perhaps even the Land of Lightning. My head was covered in short white hair, and silver eyes looked back into mine. My body was actually in good proportion, and even though I had no muscle at all, I still appeared to occasionally jog to stay in shape, or whatever that would have looked like on a 4-year-old body. I had to thank Gamer's Mind for keeping me from becoming overly anxious and depressed about my situation because it was a little strange for me to see this stranger's body as my own. A nervous breakdown was not something I wanted to experience soon or at any time in the future. Overall, I suppose I could describe myself as cute, and if I didn't somehow ruin myself, I would grow up to be quite attractive. I'm curious about how my old body appeared. I finished brushing my teeth and then entered the shower with those thoughts. Up until it was time for me to leave, the warm water flowed down my body, immersing me in a state of bliss. The shower was turned off with a turn of a knob, and I left to get ready for the day. After exiting the orphanage building, I looked around the area I was in and took in the sights of all the activity going on there. When I suddenly froze, I turned my body while shifting my gaze. The good news was that I had figured out which hidden village I was in at last. The good news was that I was in Konohagakure, also referred to as the village hidden in the leaves, which was populated by a large number of talented and resilient individuals. I squinted my eyes and stood on my tiptoes in a futile attempt to possibly catch a glimpse of another face on that mountain, but of course I found nothing. The bad news was that I could only see 3 faces on that mountain. As I turned around to follow the matron and the remaining children who were walking ahead, thoughts began to swirl in my head. What period of time had I found myself in if Minato Namikaze hadn't yet been appointed the 4th Hokage? Most of my canon knowledge was currently irrelevant, which bothered me greatly but not nearly as much as a realization that I had. I could be anywhere between the 2nd and 3rd Shinobi Wars in history if Hiruzen was still Hokage. Before Gamer's Mind took over and calmed me down so that I could consider my situation rationally, a cold sweat began to form on my back as the consequences of this discovery hit me with all the gentleness of a maglev train. Although the village appeared to be calm and I couldn't see any signs of tension on the faces of the villagers, a shinobi knew that outward appearances could always be deceiving. I had to restrain myself from grimacing as I considered what I ought to do. Finding my location in the timeline would be the most crucial, and the only way to do that would be to locate a familiar character from the series. I could roughly determine my position in time by looking at their ages and make plans accordingly. Though my overall strategy wouldn't change because I would still need to gain strength, it seemed as though the need for strength has just become even more critical. In this world, people had the power to reshape the environment at will, including leveling mountain ranges. I wanted that kind of strength. Not out of some misguided desire to defend my precious people, or because I believed that with sufficient power, I could bring about world peace. No, I just needed the ability to maintain my life and live it to the fullest without worrying about anyone taking advantage of me. If I happened to find people along the way to care for, then so be it. If it meant that I would be able to live a life without dangers to my existence, I would break my body, recombine my bones, and claw my way out of hell. I didn't know where this conviction came from, but it didn't matter because I had to act on it to ensure my own survival. Up until that point, I would not stop, waver, or give up. Emi yelled at me, "Come on Yoru," as she dragged me off to an unknown location and snapped me out of my reverie. I had the impression that I had been talking to myself in my head the entire way here, while the majority of the other kids had dispersed to engage in typical kid activities. Nevertheless, I made a conscious effort to ignore those thoughts and focus instead on taking in the surroundings. I had to concede that the park appeared to be lovely. The area was surrounded by a variety of colors from the various flowers nearby, and the trees appeared to shine with a healthy green glow. As I was being dragged off to who knows where, I basked in the lovely surroundings and enjoyed the scenery. The matron yelled, "Kids, make sure you don't go too far." I overheard her. "No promises, we will be secure. Ha ha ha." The poor woman's exasperation was so palpable that I could almost feel it coming from her as the kids responded in their typical childlike way. We simply arrived at a more forested area of the playground after I let Emi pull me there. The obvious path that led here made it simple to return to the main area where the matron was. Due to fencing in the area, I suppose Miss Iami wasn't too concerned about us getting lost here. There were a few other children present in addition to Emmy and I. Since I couldn't care less about them, I skipped over their names entirely. Emmy was so cute that the only reason I could stand to be around her was because I couldn't bear the thought of making her cry. Nip me. You're all set to play ninja, right? Hell yes. I call myself the amiable ninja. Me too. I'm 3. With her cheeks puffed, Emmy said, "Hey, hold on just a second. Yoru should also be the amiable ninja since this is his first time participating." One of the kids glanced over at me and laughed. "I'm going to call him Brat 1. Emmy, why do you even bother with him? He never plays with anyone. If anything, he should be the enemy ninja." This was Brat 2 saying, "He's always by himself and doesn't talk to anyone." And the third Brat, as he is now known, decided to speak, and he's kinda weird. Justifying your actions by saying you were aiding the alleged victim. Plus, he'll learn the game faster by being the enemy ninja. We're doing him a favor. I had no idea they began at such a young age. This will be known as annoying Brat number 4. My sweet and dependable Emmy crossed her arms and gave me her most menacing glare, but it was more adorable than frightening. She added a cute head turn, "If you guys keep being mean to Yoru then I'm not playing," to her statement. I patted Emmy's head and said, "It's okay, Emmy." I was powerless to resist. But this was as good a reason as any to engage in some form of physical activity. "No. Buts, I promised I would play with you today, so I don't mind playing the villain." Emmy still didn't seem convinced, but she agreed for the time being while maintaining a pout. I couldn't help but lightly pinch her cheeks because she was so adorable. "Stop acting like a child around me," she said, "but you were just a little kid." Well, she was literally little, because she was shorter than I was. "I am more senior to you." It was such a terrible joke that I wanted to stab my brain for coming up with it, but I suppose it would work well enough on young children if Emmy's smile meant anything. "And I'm taller than you, so that makes me the big brother. Hey, get it? Because I'm physically bigger." Despite all of her whining, she didn't really try to stop me from pinching her cheeks. The peanut gallery seemed displeased that we were enjoying our own little moment, so Brat 1 decided to make his presence known even if no one cared for it. "Alright, enough already, let's play." I rolled my eyes and then sadly withdrew my hand. "Okay, but at the very least explain how to play this game to me," he said, looking particularly smug. "It's simple, we're going to hide and as the enemy ninja, you have to catch us. Good luck with that though. Isn't that just a game of hide and seek?" He looked at me as if I were some sort of idiot for not even knowing what this game was. "What's hide and seek?" "We're playing ninja." Mission alert. Hide and seek with ninjas? You have been designated as it in this game that bears a questionable resemblance to hide and seek because you are essentially an outcast. Discover the knotheads who put you through this, and make them regret calling you it. Benefits: 50 XP. Plus 1 stat point per individual discovered. Failure: you'll feel terrible about letting your kids bully you. Are you agreeing? Why? And I chose why after deciding that fighting with him wasn't really doing my mental health any good. Again, why do I even remember what hide and seek is? I closed my eyes to let them run wherever they wanted, and when I opened them, they had vanished to an unknown location. Since there was a quest, I sort of had to actually try and find them because, to be honest, if I had found Emmy first, I would have probably just left the rest of them hanging. But now that I was by myself, I made the decision that it was time to develop some abilities that would benefit me in the future and during this game. I took a deep breath and lay down on the ground with my eyes closed in order to first get a sense of my chakra. In an effort to locate the energy concealed within my body, I concentrated on the center of my body. My navel, which houses the chakra center, finally felt warm as a result of my unwavering concentration. I made numerous attempts to grasp the warmth, but each time it eluded me. I mentally prepared myself by taking a deep breath before focusing more intently on the warmth in my navel area once more. "Breathe in, breathe out," I mentally chanted as I ignored everything else and concentrated only on myself. Ping. Meditation is a brand new skill that you have created. Level 1. Active of meditation, 46.67%. The ability to meditate is developed through sustained inner focus. Concentration and thought organization are aided by meditation, which also improves mental clarity and bodily awareness. Increase int by 2% passively. Increase wis by 2% passively. When active, regeneration of HP and CP is increased by 10%. At higher levels, you are better able to sit still and the rate of HP and CP regeneration increases. Note: cannot be activated during combat. I concentrated on trying to transfer that sensation to the rest of my body now that I had a sense of what it was like to manipulate my chakra just a little bit. Though it was noticeably more difficult, it didn't take me long to figure it out and I was able to grasp it in the end. Due to its capacity to help me pick up skills more quickly, Gamer's body is undoubtedly responsible for my ability to quickly grasp and manipulate my chakra. However, I was still attempting to understand how that operated. I gritted as I concentrated on this warm feeling, trying to project it outwardly around me. Now time for the greater test. I pictured a dome of chakra surrounding me, sort of like a domain, where I would be able to sense other people and living things. It was much more difficult than I had anticipated, and I quickly understood that while it was a feasible idea, it wasn't always the best or most economical because its range probably wouldn't be all that great. It was also difficult for chakra to leave my skin without dissipating, let alone form a dome that was big enough to be useful, so I could sense that I wouldn't advance quickly with this technique. I put that notion on hold until I had more chakra and control, choosing instead to take a different course of action. I imagined a pulse, rather than a dome, one that would provide me with feedback similar to a sonar or a bat's echolocation. I gathered a tiny bit of chakra and compelled it to leave my body through a pulse that was attached to me. It was simple to complete because it didn't call for a lot of chakra or control, and the effects were phenomenal. Ping. Chakra Sonar is a new skill you have created. LV10, 5.45%, CP, 5 per pulse for Chakra Sonar, passive, active. The user of Chakra Sonar can pulse their chakras at predetermined intervals. It can be used to scout and detect living things that have chakra, and it effectively turns the user into a sensor. This ability may develop in the future. The skill can be set to automatically activate at the user-specified interval. Per level, the skill's range expands by 10 meters. Delivered by default. 1 pulse every 5 seconds. 100 meters is the maximum range. Being able to develop this skill and make it even better was a benefit I had not anticipated, and it was a very useful skill to have. Nevertheless, I made the decision that this was the perfect opportunity to play a game of hide and seek and put this skill to good use. I changed the pulse rate to 30 seconds per pulse and covered the window so that only I could see out. My chakra was constantly pulsing as I ran deeper into the woods after finally standing up and shaking my legs to relieve the pain. Because my chakra control was currently terrible and I didn't have a lot of chakra to work with, I had to set it to 30 seconds. Due to my 20% control rate, if I had 100% control, it would take 5 times as much chakra to accomplish the same task. Let that sink in for a moment. If I had left the skill in its usual passive default state, I would have run out of chakra in 40 seconds. I felt a life signature on my feedback loop and was abruptly interrupted from my minute-long musing. I hurriedly went to the source. I wasn't trying to be subtle, so I wasn't shocked when I heard a eep and some footsteps moving away from me. Before I reached my intended destination, I quickened my pace and ran in the direction of the sounds of breathing and rustling leaves. I grabbed my victim target by the arms and raised her. "I found you, Emmy." She turned around and gave me the most adorable glare she could before I gave in. Okay, Yoru put me down. I surrender. I merely gave a, "What can you do?" shrug. Patting her head, she said, "It's okay, Emmy, it's just a game after all." "Fine, but you better quickly find the others so that we can play again," the youngster muttered as she turned her head in annoyance. She growled in annoyance as I ran past her, and I rolled my eyes and said, "Fine, but you have to keep up." A few nearby signatures were picked up after I sent out another chakra pulse. Before I realized Emmy was following me, I had slowed down and stood a good distance away from them. She glared at me negatively and said, "Yoru_." I gave her the hush sign and used my hands to slam her mouth shut. There are a few of them in the area, so I have to do this quietly to avoid scaring them away. She asked in a more level tone, looking understandably skeptical because she couldn't feel them like I could. "How do you know that?" she asked. I said to the huffing little girl, "Because I'm that good. Now sit still and watch me work," and snuck around the wooded area. I tried to avoid making the cliché mistake of stepping on a branch or something by using what meager knowledge I had of stealth. I tiptoed around the trees, keeping my head low, sending out another pulse to make sure they were still in the same spot. Ping. Stealth is a brand new skill you've created. Level 5 Stealth, active. On 23.45%. All ninjas must learn stealth as a fundamental skill in order to improve as ninjas. You can more easily breach enemy lines, assassinate important targets, and spy if your stealth is strong enough. When you need to enter stealth mode, this skill is automatically activated. You gain increased stealth, which makes it harder for people to detect your presence and locate you because every movement you make is unintentionally unobtrusive. Ability for stealth infiltration, avoidance, and concealment is 5%. -2% for each level your adversaries are stronger than you applies to them. The presence of this ability caused my body to self-correct so that I could make better use of my surroundings and make less noise. I crouched down even lower, my breath became quieter, and I sneaked up on one of the kids. I quickly slammed my hand on his mouth as soon as I was right behind him to stop him from screaming and used my other hand to stop him from wriggling around as much. I could feel him squirm less as he heard the sound of my voice, no doubt recognizing me. Quiet down. I don't want to alarm the other one. I realized that this was brat number 1 when he turned to glare angrily in my direction while maintaining a begrudging expression of respect. I informed him of where I had left Emmy before approaching my other quarry. Quest is finished. Hide and seek with ninjas? Benefits. 50 XP. Plus 15% of the stats. The remaining children were fairly easy to locate, and because I was so skilled at playing the antagonist, they made me play a few more times. It had been a while since I had played hide and seek, or at least I think it had been a while because I couldn't honestly remember. It was a good enough reason to practice my meditation, sonar, and stealth skills. Nevertheless, I continued to play along. Sadly, the quest did not pay me for the additional times I played, so I had to be content with my skill improvement. Level 10 of Gamer's Body, passive, increased HP and CP regeneration rates by 10%. Level 5, active, of meditation, 46.67%. The ability to meditate is developed through sustained inner focus. Concentration and thought organization are aided by meditation, which also improves mental clarity and bodily awareness. 10% passive increase in int. 10% passively increased WIS. When active, regeneration of HP and CP is increased by 50%. At higher levels, you are better able to sit still and the rate of HP and CP regeneration increases. Note: cannot be activated during combat. LV18, 5.45%, CP, 5 per pulse for the chakra sonar, passive, active. Delivered by default. 1 pulse every 5 seconds. 180 meters is the maximum range. Level 10 stealth, active. Off, 23.45%. Ability for stealth infiltration, avoidance, and concealment is 10%. -2% for each level your adversaries are stronger than you applies to them. My gamer's body skill was greatly aided by all the running around, which helped me level it up. Back at the park's entrance, where the matron was probably waiting for us and the other kids, we were now traveling the pathway. Yoru, how did you do it? You were like a real ninja. I couldn't even see you until you got me. Practice, was my succinct response. Now that I had demonstrated my dominance in hide and seek, I refused to acknowledge it as anything other. These kids apparently thought I was some sort of badass. Every time we played, I would apparently get the upper hand like a ninja, which apparently convinced them that I was cool. I doubt that I could have sneaked up on them as frequently as I did if it weren't for the fact that they were so young and essentially unaware of their surroundings. However, they created some incredible practice dummies for the skill, so I wasn't complaining. Hey, do you think you could teach me something? Maybe. At this, Brat 2 chimed in, saying, "Man, that's not fair, you're always so nice to Emmy." I stayed with a blank face. That's probably because she's nice to me and it also helps that she is adorable. The concerned girl writhed beneath the attention and watched with a timid expression. The brats joined together in chorus, "We're sorry." I arched an eyebrow at them and watched with interest. They looked so repentant that I decided not to refer to them as brats but rather as kids as I waved my hand back and said, yeah, I forgive you, now let's hurry up and get to where the matron is waiting for us." "Will you then teach us? Wait for me first?" "Hey," I asked before you two. Whatever else was happening behind me, I chose to ignore it and keep moving. After some time, we returned to the location where the matron had been waiting for us and proceeded to the orphanage. I thought about my day as I was taking a shower. We all ate lunch after we returned from the orphanage, and since I didn't really have anything better to do, I once again helped clean the plates. I had a lot of free time when I was 4 years old because I had no obligations to worry about. There wasn't really much I could accomplish during the day, so I had nighttime plans. I needed to take advantage of the fact that I could probably survive without sleep thanks to Gamer's Mind and work on improving my existing skills while simultaneously attempting to come up with new ones. I stopped using the warm water and dried off before donning my cozy one-piece pajama, which bit me. I then walked over to my room, where I kept a small stack of leaves in my bed. After considering what skills I could practice indoors, I decided to pick them up while I was at the park. It then occurred to me how well suited this skill was for practice indoors, plus it wasn't difficult to sneak some leaves in. After giving the leaf in my hand a quick glance, I placed it on my forehead, closed my eyes, and once more felt around for my chakra. This afternoon, I had already developed a sense of my chakra, making it easier for me to direct the flow toward my forehead. Ping! Congratulations! You've invented a brand new talent. Practice leaf concentration. Passive, Level 1. All Academy students are instructed in the leaf concentration technique, an introductory chakra control exercise. This training technique involves placing a leaf over your forehead and using it as a focal point to direct your chakra. A new leaf can be added at every level. You can improve your concentration using this method. Boost CC by 1% uses 15 CP every minute. You now have +1 NG. My STR, VIT, Dex, and ENGY stat had gone up a little bit as a result of all the things I had done throughout the day. Even though it wasn't much, I definitely appreciated it. The knowledge that practicing chakra control exercises could also help me build more ENGY was very beneficial and gave me a new perspective on how to develop my chakra. Status: the name Yoru, a human being. Next level, 75 200s level, LVL1. 400 400ths HP, 4.4 per minute region 4.4 per minute, CP, 400 400ths. CC, 21% STR, 6 VIT, 7 Dex, 6 Int, 12.1. WIS, 11 ENGY, 76 points Rio. 1000. I was pleased with the modest gains I made today because, despite doing very little work, I was able to double my CP and significantly boost my other stats. I made some calculations in my head as I turned back to look at my leaf. My CC was at 21%, which meant that for any given technique, I would need to use roughly 4.7 times more chakra. In my case, the leaf concentration technique required about 70 CP per minute, or 15 CP per minute. I had 400 CP worth of chakra and a regen rate of 4.4 CP per minute, so my skill cost a total of about 65.6 CP per minute, and I could use it continuously for about 6 minutes before I ran out of chakra. In order to avoid experiencing chakra exhaustion, I had planned on stopping a little bit earlier than that. I was unsure if my version of the gamer's body would keep me from dying when I had no chakra left, even though I knew the body would die when it ran out of chakra. Best to avoid taking a chance. With that, according to how much chakra I had left, about 5.5 minutes had passed. I made sure to check in on my status frequently, but even then, I could feel my body dwindling. I didn't like how my poor control made me tired so quickly, so I used this time to hone my meditation technique. While I had the opportunity, I might as well kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I noticed that I was losing focus and that my chakra was regenerating more quickly, but to be completely honest, this wasn't a significant improvement. My HP and CP were currently recovering naturally at a rate of 4.4 per minute. That rate increased to 6 per minute while actively meditating, which was still better than nothing. It was the longest hour I had ever had before I was able to regenerate my chakra, which took me a little less than an hour. Sincerely, it took me only 6 minutes to use up all of my chakra, but 10 times as long to replenish it. The only positive aspect of this awful situation was that I was improving my skill set, but who knew becoming strong would be so laborious? The time it took me to regenerate my chakra was slightly sped up by the level of meditation, but it was unquestionably insufficient. I then picked up my leaf, placed it on my forehead, and experienced yet another bout of boredom. I set myself apart from my surroundings and concentrated on my internal organs. The chakra was sloshing around in my center and moving throughout my body. I tried to force my chakra to move up and toward my head with more focus, but I ran into resistance. My own life force was struggling to flow freely in defiance of my commands and pulls. I therefore stepped up my efforts and focused intensely until my mind was occupied entirely with the idea of leveling up this skill. My energy began to flow in the direction I wanted it to when I sensed some kind of mental switch turning on. My skills seemed to advance quickly, and the sensation I was having was thrilling. My hand continued to instinctively grab leaves to adhere to my head, and I was hardly aware of the strain that should have resulted from trying to concentrate on several points at once. I was so focused that I didn't even notice when my chakra reached critical point or dropped into the low double digits before my body's physiological response of exhaustion overcame me. When I was reluctantly forced to leave my improved state of focus, I immediately felt a dull throbbing in my head and a slight dampness on my body. That experience was so novel that I'm not even sure how to put it into words. The passing of time seemed to have no meaning, and I could actually feel my abilities advancing quickly. In contrast to before, when they leveled up, I hardly noticed any improvement in this. The only thing that bothered me was how quickly this state passed, and yet I still felt worn out. What on earth was that? I'm happy to hear that you've reached a state of hyperfocus. Level 2 hyperfocus. Active, 64.57%. The state of hyperfocus is attained by combining meditation with a complementary skill. Skills that don't require any movement to use or perform are typically compatible. By intensifying brain activity, hyperfocus dramatically accelerates the rate at which those skills advance. You can effectively meditate with a specific skill in mind by concentrating all of your mental energy on it. Because the compatible skill is used so quickly in this state, the user uses more CP. The time you can spend in this state and the number of times you can use it each day will both increase as you level up this skill. Usage. 1 each day length, 2.64 minutes. Ping, ping, ping. Congratulations. The level of leaf concentration practice has increased by 3. Congratulations. Level 2 of meditation has been reached. Practice leaf concentration, passive, level 4, 23.43%. All Academy students are instructed in the leaf concentration technique, an introductory chakra control exercise. This training technique involves placing a leaf over your forehead and using it as a focal point to direct your chakra. A new leaf can be added at every level. You can improve your concentration using this method. Boost CC by 4% uses 15 CP every minute. Level 7, active, of meditation, 1.67%. Increase INT by 14% passively. Increase WIS 14% passively. When active, regeneration of HP and CP is increased by 70%. At higher levels, you are better able to sit still and the rate of HP and CP regeneration increases. Note: cannot be activated during combat. Even though I was completely spent at this point, my excitement barely wavered. I was only slightly upset about the limitations of the skill, but the benefits all but made up for it. Furthermore, if I understood this correctly, even if I was able to use this skill for a much longer period of time, even if I was able to increase my CC by an additional 3% and my meditation skill by a couple levels, I didn't feel tired even though it was pretty late at night, which was a good sign that Gamer's Mind was effectively keeping me as an insomniac as long as I wanted to stay awake, but without any of the negative effects, so I pushed my thoughts to the back of my mind as I concentrated on restoring my chakra. I had no idea what the next day would bring, but as long as I was given time to grow strong and train, then I was certain that I would be able to tackle the challenges in my path. My heart was still quite excited and I couldn't wait to practice that skill again tomorrow. I peeled back my eyes and assessed the surroundings I had found myself in. The best way to sum up my surroundings is to say that they appeared to be very structured. It was a world made of parts and gears that interacted to form an effective whole. The way everything was set up almost felt mechanical. Do you like the view? When I turned my head in the direction of the voice, I saw. Who was that in front of me? He had exactly the same appearance as I did, save that his eyes were golden and slit like a snake's instead of sporting silver irises. They looked so cool, though, and I was a little envious of them. Who, to put it plainly and simply, you? I asked, did you just? Can you read my mind? I stared at him strangely, unsure of what to say or do because it seemed pointless for me to say anything. I pretty much live here, so anything you think, I know. Haha, don't be so startled, kid. After all this, is our soul well, at least its surface layer? My lookalike paused and said. I took in my surroundings as I looked around with interest. My mind was spinning with so many inquiries that I wasn't even sure where to begin. For instance, what did he mean by our soul? He was who? What else was he aware of? Calm down, kid, or your brain will short circuit. Speaking of which, I shouldn't be out here for too long. I called out, wait, to get the guy's attention. As for the other question, I brought you here because the sooner we met face to face, the better. Furthermore, I just so happened to be doing a small adjustment to your body, so this was the perfect time to meet, the man said before continuing. As I am simply a shadow of my past self, you can just call me Jay. I gave his words some thought before asking, so what happens next? The man began, now, before snapping his fingers, which caused a clock to appear in front of us. It's about time for you to leave, he said after giving it a quick glance. My mouth was about to protest as my eyes widened, but my mind-reading doppelganger spoke before I could finish. He paused and looked into the distance, and as I followed his gaze, I noticed a streak of black lightning appear and bounce off the gears in my soul. He continued, the next time we meet will be done through your own power. Level up meditation to 100 and you'll be able to come here on your own instead of me dragging you here. The system isn't quite ready to operate on autopilot just yet, so I can't keep these meetings going for very long. I still have a lot of work to do. Before I could even ask him what he meant, whatever force had been holding me in place began to dissipate, and my body began to disappear from the surroundings. My doppelganger turned to me and gave me a small smile just before my body left. Yoru, I'll see you in a few years. Be careful and don't get hurt. You've spent time in a bed. Your HP and CP have returned to full health. A pounding headache attacked me as I groggily opened my eyes, forcing me to fight back a grimace. In an attempt to relieve the pain in my head, I raised my hand to massage my temple. I quickly cleared my head and shakily rose from my resting position, noticing idly that my body felt a little different. I'm curious as to what he meant by adjustments. I got out of bed, stretched a little, and then headed for the bathroom, determined to understand what had physically changed with regard to my body since I knew that sitting on my bed wouldn't help me solve that mystery. When I got there and went into the bathroom, I froze in front of the mirror because I was perfect. Today I looked so adorable that it shouldn't have been possible, whereas yesterday I only kind of looked cute. I was only 4 years old, so it should not have been possible for me to have any definition on my body, but somehow I managed to pull it off. Everything just fit because my face was the perfect size, shape, and symmetry on both sides. My white hair looked perfectly maintained, and my silver eyes almost appeared to glow. I had slightly less baby fat on my face than I did yesterday, and my brows were slightly thinner but perfectly symmetrical. This revealed some hidden sharpness in my jaws that would undoubtedly become more obvious as I got older. It wasn't really obvious unless you looked closer than I felt comfortable, but I could still see it. The only issue was figuring out how to keep my changes from the staff at the orphanage hidden from them, even though I was indescribably cute and I wasn't ashamed to admit it. There was no way for me to conceal the changes I had undergone from them, so I tore a large piece of fabric from my navy blue shirt and wrapped it around my face. My face was partially covered by the makeshift mask, which extended from the top of my nose to my neck. Although it wasn't perfect and I would definitely need to purchase a real face mask, it was sufficient for my needs, and I believe I was able to make it function better than Kakashi. I didn't want to have to explain my physical changes to anyone, and I also thought the mask look was kind of cool. Could I possibly compare it to a Kekkei Genkei? I then brushed my teeth after that. Without the cloth, of course. Soon after, I went back to the room to get dressed. I didn't have many, but what I did have was sufficient for me, so I didn't moan. I sat down on my bed and made the decision to continue working on my meditation before the sun fully rose. Fun fact. That was just a generalization. You didn't actually need to sit cross-legged to meditate. The most important factor was your level of comfort, and it goes without saying that I was more at ease lying down than cross-legged sitting. I decided to take his advice to heart and decided to practice meditation whenever I could because I was extremely curious about who my look-alike was and what we were doing here. After a while, a member of the orphanage staff entered the room to wake up the sleeping children. I might add that she was kind of cute. I opened my eyes anticipating her approach, and when she finally did, she had this expression on her face. Koto, assistant at an orphanage LVL 62 Rep 70. My tone and face showed no sign of emotion as I uttered, "Is something on my face?" Her high level was saved for later. She raised an eyebrow. "Is it true that I want to know?" "I think it kind of looks cool." After that, she continued. "We were made to set the table for breakfast after waking everyone up. It was intriguing how, even at such a young age, we were taught some fundamental domestic skills. I didn't know how I was going to waste my day as I ate breakfast with the other orphanage children at the moment. I could go to the library, but I think I'd need something like an escort or at least a patient companion. The majority of 4-year-olds couldn't read books with more than a paragraph on each page, but in this world, Children were required to mature quickly. Kakashi had to be able to perform the tasks that shinobi were expected to know since he was a genin at the age of 5, at least, if my memory serves me correctly. I sucked down my OJ as it finally dawned on me how monotonous being 4 was. Why couldn't I have regained consciousness when I was in the academy or something, or whatever had happened that caused me to forget most of my 4 years of life? I would at the very least have something exciting to anticipate. I ate my breakfast in a hurry, then washed my plates. If we went out later today, I wonder if I could sneak out or do something. I didn't have to worry about getting lost because I knew how to return to the orphanage at any time. That might work, I moved to my room and just relaxed on my bed after putting the plates on the rack. Nobody had high hopes for us young people. However, I did notice that compared to the other children my age and even older, I was treated a little bit more responsibly. Probably just because of the way I behaved because, apparently, I was an absolute loner before, but I never complained when I had to follow instructions. Koto was actually unable to recall a specific instance in which she witnessed my tears, though she did acknowledge that she wasn't always present and that this was more of a side gig for her. Yoru. When I was compelled to leave my meditative state, I signed and opened an eye. So, talk about the devil. I addressed her as I started, Koto. Do you not realize that kids my age need to sleep to grow? She laughed as she responded, don't you think it's interesting that you refer to yourself as a child even though you don't act like one? Was this how she always was? What can I do to assist you, Miss Koto? I simply need some assistance fixing the beds, and I am confident that you are the only one who can do it properly. Mission alert. Buttonhead Miss Koto is a part-time employee at the orphanage, and she needs your help setting up the beds. Make sure they are only attractive and well made. Prizes. 25 XP. 1 stat point. Reduces rep with Miss Kano after failure. Failure wouldn't be in your best interests in terms of health. Are you agreeing? Why? And I let out a sigh and rose from my bed. Okay, but I'm going to make a mess of my bed anyhow, so why bother making it right? She looked satisfied and said, that's fine. Why didn't she just ask the other staff members to assist her? I made some of the beds while Koto finished her end while keeping my face mask on because I decided I didn't care enough to find out. They weren't difficult to fix, and after a little while, we were all done. Mission alert. Buttonhead prizes, 25 XP, 1 stat point. After appearing to be satisfied, Koto smiled and gave me a brief glance. So, what plans do you have for today? I'm 4. Since what 4-year-old has plans for the day? I truly believed that would satisfy her question. We were only really good at 2 things, eating and sleeping. Evidently, she didn't believe that. She replied with a wink. We both know that you don't act 4. Come on, I promise I won't tell on you. I reasoned that I might as well tell her what I had in mind. She seemed to treat me more like a boy and less like a child, so there was no harm in telling her. I'm so bored you wouldn't even know, and maybe I'll find something interesting along the way. I was planning on leaving if we went outside. She gave me a close look before shaking her head and saying, sometimes, I don't even know what is going through your head. You're a pretty interesting kid you know, but then she fixed me with a stern look. Just be careful not to cause any trouble for anyone, alright? I guess she was content enough because she just nodded and left me on my own after I replied, yes, ma'am. Once that was done, I was free to meditate in peace until the other kids and I had to leave. I was hoping to see something intriguing. The good news is that I was able to escape from the orphans and avoid Emmy, though I did feel sorry for the poor girl. I'll atone for it to her eventually. After eating lunch, we were to leave the orphanage and take a short stroll through the village to unwind. I was maybe definitely lost, which was bad news. I might have used a few side streets and shortcuts to get around the village so I could see as much of it as quickly as possible. The only issue was that I didn't actually know where these shortcuts led, and when I asked locals for directions, either they ignored me or I didn't understand what they were saying when they did. Even if they pointed me in the right direction and gave me the rest of the instructions, I would still forget which left I was supposed to make on which street because I lacked eidetic memory. Why, when I had only been to the park, did I think I knew my way around the village? So that's how I ended up in a village's forested area. I don't know how I went from a city to a forest, but hey, maybe I could use this place to practice some things. Finally, I came across a clearing, and holy cow, did it look lovely. The valley in between them could hold the setting sun, creating a beautiful picturesque view, and I could see the peaks of 2 small mountains. I took notice of the 3 cylindrical wooden beams protruding from the ground, which were surrounded by some damaged or broken kunai. A clear pond finally appeared in front of me, adding even more beauty to the scene. I forced those thoughts from my mind and took a look around. I might as well begin engaging in additional practice activities and begin developing new skills. I approached a tree, put my foot on it, and sent chakra in that direction. Not too little that I would collapse, but not too much that I would blow up. I tried to stand when I felt like I had enough chakra in my foot, but I immediately collapsed to the ground. OWW. I grumbled and rubbed my sore behind as I sternly regarded the tree, deciding that I would stay here until I could climb that tree. I decided to get a running start with more determination than I could have imagined, and as soon as my foot touched the tree, I channeled chakra into the soles of my feet. I quickly cut the tree and landed on the ground. Ping. Level 1, Active, Passive, Chakra Reinforcement, 34.26%. The ability to focus chakra internally throughout the body through chakra reinforcement gives the user greater offensive, defensive, and evasive capabilities. It is a fundamental chakra manipulation skill that, with practice, practically becomes automatic, making it passive. When active, provides a 1% increase in STR. When active, provides a 1% increase in Dex. When active, increase durability by 0.5%. Price, 100 CP. Since getting angry wouldn't help me win this battle against nature, Gamer's Mind prevented me from losing control of my emotions in response to this embarrassment. Even though this showed me that I was using more chakra than I should have in that last stunt, I chose to see the positive side of things and be proud of the skill I had developed. I tried once more after taking a deep breath. Once more. Once more. Once more. Once more. Level 1 of chakra reinforcement has been reached. Level 1 of chakra reinforcement has been reached. Gamer's body has gained 1 level. Gamer's body has gained 1 level. Up until then, ping. You've invented a brand new talent. Active. Level 1 tree climbing, 34.52%. You can now move more freely and utilize your chakra more effectively by using your chakra to adhere to surfaces. Boost CC by 1% uses 25 CP every minute. After all that time, I created the skill and thought, wow, that took much longer than anticipated. It had taken me a few hours from when I unintentionally used chakra reinforcement and used up my chakra to when I had to meditate to get my CP back. Though I did wonder how I knew to do that, I shook my head and made my way back to the base of the tree. I never imagined it would be so challenging to climb up the tree with chakra. Once that was all set up and finished, I made the decision to take a break and review my stats and skills to see what minor advancements I had made during this time. Level 3, Active, Chakra Reinforcement, 34.26%. When active, provides a 3% increase in STR. When active, provides a 3% increase in Dex. When active, increase durability by 1.5%. Price, 100 CP. 12th level of Gamer's Body, passive HP and CP regeneration rates were increased by 12%. Increase of 12% in HP and CP level 15, active of meditation, 46.67%. Increase int by 30% passively. Increase WIS by 30% passively. When active, regeneration of HP and CP is increased by 150%. At higher levels, you are better able to sit still and the rate of HP and MP regeneration increases. Note: cannot be activated during combat. The name Yoru, a human being. Level 1 upward mobility, 100 200ths. 504 504ths HP, 5.64 milliliters per second region 100 504ths region, 5.64 per minute, CP. CC. 30% STR, 7 VIT, 8 Dex, 8 Int, 14.1. WIS. 13 ENGY, 87 points Rio. 1000, note. As a result of the changes you've made to your physical appearance, your gamer's body has improved. I hummed to myself as I took in the improvements. Neat. The adjustments to my body that this guy had mentioned are now clear. In contrast to the cosmetic changes I had received, my gamer's body also raised my base HP and CP instead of just their rates of regeneration. The physical changes to my face and body weren't bad. Rather, they weren't really that helpful to me at this point in my life. I opened my limbs and turned to face the sun for some reason. Even though there was still a ton of daylight left, I had the impression that Koto would stand in for me. Use your intuition. Now I'm unsure of what else I am notifying you now that I will become Hokage sooner. Well done, Obito. Kakashi, you are definitely making fun of me. No, those are just your insecurities. We are a team now, so Obito shouldn't start arguments with Kakashi. It's unfair that Rin always takes his side. Although I'm glad everyone is so animated, we still have a test to take, and it appears we have an unexpected visitor. At that moment, I could feel 4 sets of eyes examining me, either with interest, disinterest, or both. I then looked at 4 forms as this introduction was being said. The first one had spiky silver hair that was slightly parted to the left and a face mask that looked much better than the one I was still donning at the time that covered most of his face. I almost didn't even realize I was wearing it. He was dressed in a brown sword strap and a blue uniform, which formed a X across his shirt. He wore a Konoha headband around his head and had black eyes. The next notable person was a cute girl who stood tall for her age. She had brown eyes and straight brown hair that was styled into a chin-length bob to frame her face. Additionally, she had a rectangular purple mark on each cheek. She wore a light purple apron skirt over a long-sleeved black top, and underneath, black shorts. Along with a pair of sandals, red stockings that reached her thighs, and a small, red bracelet on her left wrist, she also wore the customary Konoha forehead protector. She was a cute girl, bite me. That's why I was so descriptive of her clothing. A young man with short, spiky black hair and black eyes was sitting next to her. He was dressed in a blue uniform with long sleeves and a blue jacket with orange trimmings. 2 buttons on the collar of the jacket held it to the rest of the outfit. He additionally sported a white belt, shinobi sandals, the typical Konoha forehead protector in dark blue, and a set of orange lens goggles attached to ear protectors. Those 3 seemed to be 8 or 9 years old, which is roughly twice my age. The most intriguing of the group was a man with spiky blonde hair and bright, blue eyes. He was extremely attractive, with jaw-length bangs framing each side of his face. He was wearing the typical Konoha uniform, which had 2 bands on each of his sleeves, along with a green flak jacket, a blue forehead protector, and blue sandals. I recognized those 3 people right away as Kakashi, Rin, Obito, and Minato, respectively, and as we looked at and observed each other, I finally came to a few conclusions. The good news was that I figured out where I was in the timeline at last. The Third Shinobi War was taking place at the time, which was bad news. In conclusion, fuck my life. Then, in an overtly mocking whisper, Obito covered his mouth and said, "Hey Kakashi, I think this kid is trying to jack your gig. You should file for copyright. I think I should file a copyright lawsuit against you." I gave Obito a thorough examination while observing his behavior. I could feel my body trembling as I stared at him, but I couldn't for the life of me figure out why. I tried to use my knowledge of the anime to explain this feeling, but I was at a loss for words. For some reason, I had trouble remembering specific details about some of this world's characters. Instead of fully recalling who they were as people or what they would look like in the future, I was only able to recall their names and rudimentary descriptions. For instance, I was fairly certain that Minato would succeed as the 4th Hokage, but when I tried to think of anything else, I was at a loss. Similar to how I recognized Kakashi, nothing came to mind when I thought about his future or what would happen to him. The same goes for Rin, Obito, and essentially anyone else I set my mind to. It was as if my memory of their futures simply did not exist and all I knew about them at the time was a general understanding of who they were. Kushina was the current Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, and I could remember that she was good with seals, but other details escaped my memory. I made the decision to stand out from those obtrusive thoughts and distanced myself from them. I said blandly, "You act more like a child than anyone else here." The black-haired boy grinned and pointed to his headband, saying, "You see this? This means that I am officially a shinobi of the leaf and no longer considered a kid. As a matter of fact, it's the first stepping stone to my path of becoming Hokage." His grin widened, adding, "As a matter of fact, this also means that I am your superior and you can't talk back to your superior. You mean to tell me that as long as I wear a headband, I can order people around and they can't argue with me? What? That's not what I meant, I say." I tilted my head as I watched him grow more agitated. "Isn't the premise the same? Your headband apparently gives you the privilege of talking down to those without one and we plebeians can't fight back. Am I right? I dread to see the day when you become Hokage if that is your stance on how civilians and ninjas should interact." "You know that's not what I meant, you're just putting words in my mouth." He gritted his teeth as he glared at me. His eyes then widened as he looked at me, then at Kakashi, then back at me. "No, there are two of you," he yelled, pointing amusingly at both of us. Rin called in frustration, "Obito." Kakashi was assessing me, and I could see that I was doing the same. Ping. You've invented a brand new talent. 9.89%. Observe, passive, active, LV2. Continuous observation led to the development of a skill that enables quick information gathering. The ability to observe things, situations, and people. The amount of data obtained increases with skill level. You can now access information about people who are 2 levels higher than you. Charges 5 CP in defense. I could already see the bare minimum of information about people before I had this skill, so it just slipped my mind. Nevertheless, I'm embarrassed to admit that I forgot entirely about getting this skill. Identifier. Kakashi Hitaki Human Race Degree, Level 23. Rep. 2. Additionally, everyone in this group was much more experienced than I was, so this skill wasn't even useful to begin with. Minato Namikaze is the name. Human race. The level is 115. Rep. 10. Obito Uchiha's name. Human race rank, LVL 15. Rep. 5. Call sign. Rin Nohara. Human race rank, LVL 15. Rep. 10. Well, at least I could practice this skill. Obito yelled at me, "Hey, are you ignoring me?" I asked him, Did you say something?" as I stared at him bewildered. Minato and Rin struggled to contain their laughter as Minato's eyes widened in horror. Under that mask, I could have sworn to see Kakashi smiling, but I was unable to confirm it. With a twitching eye, Obito gathered himself. "I was wondering why you were here." "It's a good question. What are you doing here?" I noticed that this place was empty. That appeared to give him a small confidence boost. As I previously stated, I'm now a recognized shinobi of the Leaf. However, talk about unfair, there appears to be another test that no one else informed me of. With a few chuckles, Minato finally appeared at this point and said, "Come on, Obito, it's not that bad," before turning to face me and saying, "But he does ask an important question. Why are you out here? Where are your parents?" I chose honesty as the best course of action and refrained from using sarcasm with Minato, who could probably kill me with a single flick of the wrist. In addition, I was learning how to climb trees. Peeved. Minato gave me a pitiful look, but it soon changed to interest, and he smiled. Obito laughed and clutched his stomach. "Show it to me." I got to my feet and dusted my pants as I shrugged. "Wait, sensei. What makes climbing trees so special? Anyone can do it." Rin reprimanded him, saying, "Obito, you shouldn't make fun of the poor kid. He's probably just here to play." I could hear Rin saying this. "You are correct, Obito, but you should know that there are 2 ways to climb a tree. Using both your hands and feet, or just your feet." Minato simply smiled and looked at them. The eyes of Rin and Obito widened in comprehension. But," the Uchiha exclaimed in shock, "but how would he know how to do that? He can't be older than 5, we didn't learn that until we were in the academy." However, I was a chunin at 5. Obito stumbled, but it was clear that he was struggling to say, "But you are a special case, Kakashi." "And why should Kakashi be the only special case?" the blonde Junin questioned, furrowing an eyebrow. Obito mumbled and bowed his head in resignation. I looked at Obito from my new vantage point on the tree, parallel to the ground, and said, "Also I am 4. I didn't even think he could sag anymore." "There are 2 of you," I say. While watching me repeatedly climb up and down the tree, everyone else ignored the pouting Uchiha. Minato placed a hand on his chin and said, "Not bad, kid. You must have been working on this for a while, am I right?" I moaned in irritation. It took me 2 hours to get this stupid exercise down. The good news is that I was able to make an attack on all the failures. I finished by pointing at the numerous cracked trees, even though I knew something wasn't right because no one else mentioned it. "Why are you all so quiet?" Rin asked, with stars in her eyes, Kakashi looking at me, Minato showing some interest, and Obito appearing to have a rain cloud over his head. Interesting. Did he have a storm-style variation? The aspiring 4th sighed and explained, "No, it's just that it usually takes a few days to a week to get down tree climbing to the level you have it down, especially if you are new to using chakra." I didn't know the technique was that difficult, but the poor black-haired boy was in denial. He must be exaggerating, right, sensei? Blue eyes locked to mine as he began to see me in a new way. No, I could tell that he was upset by his speed of progress. He seemed to be looking past me into the distance, then back at me, saying, "Not bad kid, but you really shouldn't be here. Well, you should be fine if I show you the way out." Since it wasn't my place to obstruct their training, I simply nodded. I was about to leave after they gave me a general direction to go until Obito Uchiha. When I turned around, I saw the black-haired Obito glaring at me with renewed vigor. The name of the incoming Hokage is that. Interesting. I gave him a lazy glance and said, "Yorodon." The brown-haired girl said with a smile, "I'm Rin Nohara." Kakashi cast a sluggish glance in my direction, calling me Kakashi Hatake. Then Minato grinned and said, "You can call me Minato. Maybe I'll work with you in the future?" I shook my head in agreement and said, "I would like that, Mr. Minato. I hope you guys enjoy your training." I then started walking through the forest in the general direction he had indicated. I periodically climbed to the top of one of the taller trees to check on my progress toward my destination. My chakra was so low that I descended once more to the ground to take a brief break. I eventually got to my feet and wiped my pants. I'm nearly there. A chill ran through my body and a feeling of dread filled me. While something was making my heart race, I was completely baffled as to what it was that was making me uneasy. I suddenly sensed a threat to my safety, and I hurriedly made an effort to avoid whatever was being thrown my way. Too late now. Ugh! A stinging pain shot up my neck, and I moaned in agony. My body hit the lukewarm dirt beneath me, and my vision started to become hazy. Ping. Level 10, passive, of the danger sense, 45.0%. Danger detection is a basic survival instinct. The earlier it can detect danger, the higher the skill level. It enables the user to anticipate when something negative might occur. 10% likelihood of spotting danger. Ping. Level 1 poison resistance, passive, 35%. Your resistance to poisons is increased by poison resistance. The more poisons you contract, the less effective they are against you. Reduces the potency of all poisons by 1%. My vision grew dimmer, and I couldn't even enjoy the new abilities as I considered my predicament. I had a good feeling that I wouldn't pass away, at least not just yet. My attacker could have easily cut off my head instead of poisoning me if he or she had wanted to kill me. I was extremely irritated that I had been singled out for some reason. Why isn't my life simpler? With some pride, Minato turned to face his animated new team. He could tell that they had all expressed excitement about passing the bell test, even though one of them had a harder time doing so. Ha! Not even a covert test can stop me from achieving my objective of becoming Hokage. Obito, Sai, HN. Oi, Kakashi, you're making fun of me. The future Hokage grinned as he observed their impressionistic forms before giving the young boy's departure a thoughtful glance. In addition to the boy, he had also seen another life form in the vicinity, but he was certain it wasn't an enemy because it didn't appear to be harboring any malice. When he learned that the silver-eyed boy was an orphan, he ruled out the possibility that it was the child's secret bodyguard or something similar. A shinobi would only be in this training area without his knowledge if they were stalking something or someone, and that was the only other possible explanation. The blonde-haired Jonin thought, Root. He was largely familiar with their methods and wasn't shocked that they were pursuing a young person of such talent. It was not surprising that they were using more direct methods to find talented prospects like the young boy with Woru rearing its ugly head. The only other people he knew with such character were his little silver-haired genin and Makoto's own child. A child no older than 4 with such maturity and aptitude was very rare. When his team approached and Obito spoke up, he was startled out of his thoughts. "Hey sensei, are we going to go on any missions right now? Maybe we can save a princess or something, or we can save a nation, right?" Wheel, the poor child was clueless. "So, the child you told me about is this one, huh?" "Yes, Lord Danzo, he has exhibited amazing maturity for his age and has a remarkable capacity for learning and creating skills." "Interesting. And you claim that he has demonstrated some mastery over 2 of the 3 primary chakra control exercises, and all by himself, too?" "Yes, Lord Danzo, but it would be best to speak with him directly since he has been awake for a while." I then made the decision to open my eyes. I had to take a moment to get used to the dim light before I could quickly survey my surroundings. Well, it was pretty obvious that I wasn't at the orphanage anymore. From what I could see, the room was plain and devoid of extravagance. The room had a desk, dark brown walls, and 2 other people. I groggily got to my feet, noting absent-mindedly that I wasn't bound or anything, and then I looked at the 2 people in front of me. The person to the left looked like an elderly, frail man. He had bandaged right eye and shaggy black hair. He had an X-shaped scar on his chin, and when I looked at his face, I saw that he was wearing a white shirt underneath a black or dark gray robe that extended to just above his right shoulder. I was a little relieved that my hazy memories still allowed me to remember Danzo's profile and said, "Danzo neat." I then looked in the direction of the other person in the room. The fact that she was a woman should be noted first. The second thing to notice was her short, chestnut brown hair, which was pulled back into two tiny tails and rested on her shoulders. She had attractive fair skin, hazel eyes, and a mature body. Although her breasts appeared to be in the C-cup range, the most significant feature Koto was that she was the orphanage maid who took care of me. I suppose this explains her high level, then. I began softly, examining Danzo. I would ask why you kidnapped me, but it seems obvious enough. Bandages evident of either a horrific accident or, given the state of this world, war. There's also the fact that you addressed him as Lord, indicating that he is of a much higher position than you. From the contents of your conversation, I assume that my peculiar talents interested you all enough to kidnap me. I can only conclude that you either don't see me as a threat, you want me to be more agreeable toward you, both, or you were neglectful, but I find that highly unlikely. I paused before continuing. The fact that I am not dead reinforces the thought that you want to use my capabilities. Then there's the fact that my movements have not been restricted. While Danzo continued to display an emotionless expression, Koto appeared to be amused. I continued, and finally you had the courtesy to respect my privacy enough to leave my mask on. Therefore, I can only assume you want to use me for something beneficial for your cause. I don't know how long I have been out for, but I doubt I've left the Hidden Leaf Village. They didn't move to stop me from speaking. The ninja maid asked with a lip tilt, "Oh, and why is that?" I began, "Well, you have been watching me for a long time. No, not just me, but all the kids in the orphanage, but I just so happened to catch your attention. If Hidden Leaf had allowed a person of your caliber to not only sneak into the village but to also stay in their midst for who knows how long, then I would fear for the future of this village. Also, I'm dubious of the fact that an enemy would go to all the trouble of sneaking into." I continued without pausing, "If you wanted to infiltrate the village's ranks, well, I highly doubt being an orphanage maid would get you far up. All this, without even mentioning the fact that working at an orphanage would definitely require a background check to make sure the personnel isn't someone uncouth. The risk would not be justified." I paused to check if I had missed anything before remembering something with narrowed eyes. I just remembered that Lord Minato had looked past me at the time as if he was looking at something or someone else. I hadn't made note of it at the time and I'm sure no one else in my position would have, but it makes sense. If you had been watching me right up until you attacked, then it stands to reason that you were at the training grounds when I was there. If that's the case, then Lord Minato must have noticed you, and if you were an enemy he would have either captured or killed you. I paused while closely examining Koto. The woman asked with a raised eyebrow, "Lord Minato? What makes you think that he is stronger than me?" I simultaneously said, "Instincts," and thought, "Your level." I turned to Danzo. "I feel just as afraid of you as I do of him, but I feel a lot more afraid of him than I do of you. In conclusion, you kidnapped me for some higher up of the village and, given the shadiness of the whole thing, probably to use or train me for some secret organization. You have gained +10 int and +10 wis for your astute observations. Ping. Thanks for developing a new talent. Lying level 5, active, passive, 38.86%. Your capacity to tell lies and not be discovered. When you lie, this ability automatically comes into play. 5% chance of achievement. -20% for lies that are too unbelievable. Neat. The silence persisted in the room as Danzo remained silent and Kano gave me a close examination as if evaluating what I had to say. He spoke up out of nowhere, "And do you refer to Minato as Lord? Because you fear his power?" he inquired, staring directly at me with his one eye. "No." I shook my head. "I would say something about how respect is earned, but I believe that is a given. I consider him as such because, despite being obviously much stronger than me, he treated me with respect even after I told him I was an orphan. I believe that since he treated me with respect, I would treat him with the respect he deserved." You would have to strain your eyes to see Danzo's faint smile, but it was there. "You told me he was impressive and mature for his age, but you failed to encapsulate the magnitude of his character. You should already know by now, Kano, that when filing a mission report every variable must be carefully explained and key points must be emphasized. I am disappointed." Danzo smirked, surprising both Kano and me. Of course he wasn't, as she rolled her eyes and grinned. The chestnut-haired woman must have realized that point. I apologize, Lord Danzo, for my negligence. I will endeavor to never make the same mistake again, she said. Although the change was barely perceptible, Danzo's face returned to its usual expression of apathy. See that you do. Now that we are all aware of why we are here, I would like to know your response, he said. You're giving me a choice. I blinked. You would have passed out from chakra exhaustion during your training. Kano would have discovered you, and he would have brought you back to the orphanage. Afterward, you would eventually go to the Shinobi Academy due to your talents and become a shinobi of the leaf, or you could live a life of a normal human being. If you decline, we will have to remove your memories of this encounter. I started to think, although I was aware that my memory was hazy, I was certain that Danzo had been less amenable. I see, then I accept. I don't think I can survive another day at the orphanage, and I feel like the academy won't teach me everything you plan to have me learn. Danzo nodded and then turned to face Kano. As for you, your negligence must not go without consequence. As of this moment you are coming out of your inactive state and you will return to full duty as this boy's trainer and overseer. I expect that he will excel under your care. I swear there was a ghost of a smirk on his face. I will strive to exceed your expectations, Lord Danzo. He will undoubtedly blossom under my tutelage, Koto agreed with a smile. Then we are done, Danzo began. Yoru is yours to manage however you see fit, within reason of course, and I feel that it is unnecessary to mention that, but you are now discharged. The now active shinobi bowed before leaving the room and said, Thank you, Lord Danzo. I walked right after her. However, as soon as we left the room, Koto abruptly put his hand on my shoulder, and I felt the space around me change. Before I could control my nausea, I felt my legs give way and my head begin to spin. I said blatantly, that was uncalled for. She murmured, You took that better than I thought, before remarking, Always expect the unexpected. Right. I then turned to look around me and saw that I was in a well-lit living area. Everything was neat, tidy, and/or clean, so it was clear that the place had been well maintained. The room was small, probably an apartment, and the living room and kitchen were open to each other. The dining area had a small table, and the living room had 2 couches. A pair of doors, most likely leading to a bathroom and a bedroom, were finally present. Overall, it appeared to be a good place for a single person to reside. Nice place, I thought absent-mindedly. Thank you. As you know, I'll be your teacher and I expect to be addressed as such. I'll probably run you through the basics today, but we'll really start training tomorrow. Help yourself to any food or drink in this house. Do you have any questions? The woman I was speaking to nodded. There were actually 2 of us, but I only asked the one person I was currently concerned about, where will I sleep? You will be sleeping with me, she replied, flashing a small smile. Of course we need to grow closer together as student and teacher, so you will be sleeping with me. She seemed pleased with my response, so I simply nodded, and she then looked at me inquisitively, asking, Why exactly do you have a mask? I'm genuinely curious if there's any other reason, but it's fine if you don't want to tell. I retorted. My face changed a lot, without showing any emotion in my gaze. She inquired, Why would your face suddenly change, and how bad could it be that you would hide it under a mask? I noticed that one of her brows raised in interest as she spoke. You certainly appear different from before, but how? The answer I gave was, probably bloodline or something, though I have a feeling that making me look good isn't all that it does. Tell me, have you felt any differences in your body? She asked, nodding thoughtfully. All bloodlines have some kind of use, especially ones that change your physical structure. I chose to tell her only a part of the truth. I've felt like I have more stamina and I think my chakra has increased a little. It would help me later on if she understood that my physical limits were very little and that she wouldn't have to worry about overtraining me. After briefly praising me, she said, Flare it. Thus, I acted. The woman gave me a very curious look and said, This is actually quite amazing, almost like an Uzumaki, but not quite, after muttering something under her breath for a moment. Your chakra pool seems to have increased by around 10 to 15% since I last felt you flare your chakra. While I can't measure the amount of stamina you have, if what you were saying is true then this is quite the impressive bloodline, she continued. I reflected, she was pretty accurate. She must have been a really incredible sensor because my gamer's body skill currently boosts my HP, CP, and SP by 12%, so to estimate my increase so accurately, she must have noticed my talent because of this, but then. When did you last feel my chakra? She replied, When you were playing hide and seek. I took a moment to reflect as I realized that I had been employing my chakra sonar skill quite frequently. She was a skilled shinobi and a sensor, so I had no idea she had been around. It didn't help that my sonar range was fairly wide, making it even more difficult to detect her if she had been on the edge of it. She gave me a puzzled look before saying, "Actually, what were you doing to flare your chakra so wantonly around the area? Any half-decent sensor in the area could have sensed the signature you were releasing, and I don't think they would take to it so kindly. It's a good thing that you all were at the park and not someplace crowded, or it might have been disastrous." I paused before responding, "Oops, I was experimenting with a new technique I developed." She questioned with intense curiosity, "Oh? I really didn't feel like running around looking for those kids in the forest, so I decided to try finding them through sensing their small chakra signatures somehow, and so I created a technique to do so," I made the decision to say in my explanation. "You developed a chakra sensing method to engage in a game of hide and seek?" "Yes. I'm not sure if I should categorize you as immensely brilliant or enormously dull," the woman sighed. "How well does this method of yours work?" she continued, staring directly at me. "I know that I can expand the range of the technique with practice, but I'm hoping that I could evolve it into something better and more subtle. So far, I can sense anything in a 180-meter radius, whereas I could only sense 10 meters in the beginning." She confirmed, "Yes, you do that." She added, "While this technique isn't really subtle, it can still be useful in reconnaissance, but if you can somehow improve upon it and make it less crude, then it will be like you became an actual natural-born sensor. Very useful in the field." She asked, "Is there anything else?" And I nodded. Before continuing, I took a brief pause and said, "I feel like I still have room to grow and that my ability might improve with some training, but I can't be sure." She regarded me with a smile. "You really make things more interesting, don't you, Yoru?" She now appeared even more intrigued. "If you can increase your chakra by so much just by your bloodline awakening, but you can still grow." She murmured a little before coming to the conclusion, "No harm in trying. Worst that happens is that this is the limit." I blinked. "I strive to go above and beyond, teacher." She gives me a satisfied nod before asking if I want her to get me a suitable face mask. "It will make things a little easier for me if it is not too much of a hassle for you," I said after nodding in agreement. She nodded and added, "Then I'll see that I get something like that for you. Is there anything else I need to be worried about?" I paused to reflect before shaking my head in denial. After acknowledging my response, she nodded and said, "Now then. I assume you know what this is, right? I would hope all those times I brought you books from the library amounted to something." She then pulled out a piece of blank white paper. When I heard that, my brows furrowed because I could only half remember that ever happening. I mentally shook those thoughts away and nodded. "Yes, I'm using chakra paper to test my affinities. I just channel a tiny bit of chakra inside, and the paper will respond in one of 5 different ways depending on my natural affinity. The paper will catch fire and burn up, becoming ash. The paper will tear in 2 in the wind. The paper will wrinkly in lightning. Earth. The paper will decompose and turn into dirt. Water causes the paper to become damp or wet. I think that's how things work." She nodded, saying, "I'm glad you remember. This saves me the trouble of explaining this to you. Let's see what you got." I nodded and took the chakra paper in my hands, channeling a tiny bit of chakra into it. It became wet and split in half, with one half igniting and wrinkling simultaneously as the other half turned to dust and crumbled away. It was significant to note that everything happened almost instantly, with what seemed to be no time between each procedure the chakra paper underwent. Level 1. Passive, Natural Water Affinity, 2.50%. You can manipulate and control water-style ninjutsu more easily thanks to your natural affinity for the element of water. Effects of water are passively increased by 0.25%. 0.50% off the price of water-style ninjutsu. 50% more experience is gained when using and learning water techniques. Level 1. Passive, Natural Wind Affinity, 2.50%. You can manipulate and control wind-style ninjutsu more easily thanks to your natural wind affinity. Effects of wind jutsu are passively increased by 0.25%. 0.5% off the price of wind-style ninjutsu. 50% more experience is gained when using and learning wind techniques. Level 1. Passive, Natural Lightning Affinity, 2.50%. You can manipulate and control lightning-style ninjutsu more easily thanks to your natural lightning affinity. Effects of lightning jutsu are passively increased by 0.25%. 0.50% off the price of lightning style ninjutsu. 50% more experience is gained when using and learning lightning techniques. First level natural fire affinity, passive, 2.50%. You can manipulate and control fire style ninjutsu more easily thanks to your natural affinity for fire. Effects of fire are increased 0.25% passively. 0.50% off the price of fire style ninjutsu. 50% more experience is gained when using and learning fire techniques. Level 1. Passive, natural earth affinity, 2.50%. You can manipulate and control earth-style ninjutsu more easily thanks to your natural earth affinity. Earth effects are passively increased by 0.25%. 0.50% off the price of earth-style ninjutsu. 50% more experience is gained when using and learning fire techniques. My teacher didn't even wait to see my response before leaving me in her home and disappearing in a whirlwind of leaves to gather supplies for my training. Help yourself to the fridge. I'll be out for a while to gather materials for your training. I wasn't sure if I should feel sorry for her or not, so I chose to be uncaring. She would overcome it because she was a skilled shinobi. I shrugged, sat down on the couch, and considered my options. Well, I could finally exercise without being concerned about being discovered, but I was still going to be trained. The only reason I didn't do it while I was in the orphanage was because I didn't know what kind of person I was during the 4 years that are blank in my memory. Therefore, if I suddenly started acting in a way I wouldn't have ordinarily, I might have been suspicious. I might have been worrying too much, but since Kodo had apparently been keeping an eye on me for a while, I think I made the right decision by keeping a mostly neutral attitude. I didn't realize how hungry I was until now, so I went to the refrigerator to see what kind of food she had. Eggs, Greek yogurt, a variety of fruits and vegetables, milk, and cheese round out the meal. Yes, that appeared to be about right. An experienced shinobi should consume the right foods to support their training and development. She did, however, tell me to help myself, so I blended some milk with some fruit, Greek yogurt, and ice from the freezer. After that, I prepared an omelet using eggs, tomatoes, spinach, and mozzarella cheese. Ping. Congratulations on creating the skill, cooking. Level 10. Passive, in cooking, 34.5%. The capacity for cooking and the quality of the food produced. Your current skill level enables you to prepare moderately difficult meals like lasagna, baked pasta, difficult soups, etc. Hint. Some dishes can only be prepared following a recipe or after you've watched someone demonstrate how to do it. Cooking time is increased by 10%. Instant meals are unaffected. 10% more likely to succeed in producing a new dish. Improves the meal's flavor by 10%. Instant meals are unaffected. Neat. It's important to note that I had to use a stool in order to properly use the kitchen's appliances because I was so damn short. I couldn't wait to get older, but I hoped I wouldn't get too tall or anything. Maybe 6 feet tall, or 1.9 to 2.1 meters, would be fine. I moved to the kitchen counter with those fleeting thoughts and savored my straightforward breakfast of eggs and a smoothie while I waited for my teacher to finish whatever it was she was doing. Suddenly I am back. Some of my food got stuck in my esophagus, and I had to cough to keep my heart from lurching out of my throat. I gulped down my smoothie and then turned to face Kodo, who had just appeared behind me. I directly asked, "Can you not do that?" She said, "Always expect the unexpected," and threw down a stack of books, a stack of tags with fuinjutsu seals on them, kunai, and shuriken without ceremony. Before moving on to more advanced material, these will serve as your training materials for a while. I ate a small portion of the omelet and then looked at the titles of the books she brought: Chakra Theory, Chakra Flow in Hand Seals, Different Aspects of Chakra, Human Anatomy and Physiology. I picked up one of the tags and asked Kodo, "And these are for?" "Restriction tags," she said before going on to explain. "Help restrict your body's natural movements by a maximum of 10 times, but they can only last a day at most and are stupidly expensive, but I want to test how drastically your body will improve with such restrictions placed on them. I also don't want to risk stunting your growth by letting you play with weights, so this is a better alternative. You are a smart kid, so I expect you to quickly grasp the more intricate details on chakra," she said, pointing at the books, such as its different aspects and how it interacts with us through the use of hand seals. I gave a brief nod before asking, "So what do you want me to work on right now?" I suddenly felt my body becoming more restricted as the kunoichi grabbed a tag and slapped it on the back of my neck. For now, I want you to read all those books on chakra theory while being restricted by 3x. It'll be thrice as hard to move around, so you should be able to get a decent amount of exercise in. Tomorrow we will start with our real training, said the teacher. The paper tags eventually burn out, so to speak, when a lot of chakra flows through it over time. This is more so due to the nature of the restriction seal than the paper itself, but I digress. She then proceeded to eat the portion of my unfinished omelette that was in my face. She just got up and threw the plate in the sink and left me alone in the living room table with a stack of books in my hands, saying, "Not bad, Yoru. You might actually make a woman happy one day. It will require some time." Day 2 of my training had just passed, and I still had a ton of reading to do. Koto seemed to have a lot of confidence in my capacity to take in and understand this information, you know. Either that, or she merely assumed that I would be familiar with chakra to the point where she wouldn't need to introduce it to me. Since chakra has so many intricate details, it would take too much time to even attempt to explain them all. Although everyone had a limit to how much their chakra could grow, I wondered if that applied to me. Basically, a chakra is a combination of spiritual and physical energies that can be increased through training and meditation. But that made me wonder why my meditation skill didn't raise my maximum CP, didn't it? Analysis of error found error patching. Mistake patched. You have received +5 stat points as compensation for finding an error in a skill description. Level 15. Active of meditation, 46.67%. The ability to meditate is developed through sustained inner focus. Concentration and thought organization are aided by meditation, which also improves mental clarity and bodily awareness. Increase int by 30% passively. Increase wis by 30% passively. 30% passive increase in ENGY when active. Regeneration of HP and CP is increased by 150%. At higher levels, you are better able to sit still and the rate of HP and CP regeneration increases. Note: cannot be activated during combat. Well, that clarified the situation. Neat. This might have been more of a visual error than a true anatomical one because I didn't feel like my CP had increased. I had managed to gain +3 STR, +3 VIT, and +3 Dex thanks to the restriction seals, but since that had all happened in the space of only a few days, I still had a lot of room to develop. The name Yorodon, a human being. Level 1 upward mobility, 100/200ths. 672 670 seconds HP, 7.5 per minute region, 7.15 per minute CP, 1100. CC, 30% STR, 10 VIT, 11 Dex, 11 Int, 15 WIS, 14 ENGY, 15-12 points Rio. 1000. My teacher and I were now at a deserted training area with targets set up and kunai and shuriken scattered in front of me. The real kicker was that I was wearing a restriction tag on my body. I want you to try and hit as many of those targets as you can while wearing the restriction seal. I don't expect you to get any right away, so take your time. When you can finally hit at least 3, we'll go do some basic physical conditioning to get your body to the right fitness level. If you are still all awake by the end of the day, you may go back home and we'll call it a day. I could tell you were about to say, alive, but I still nodded in agreement and started working with my cruel teacher. Ping. Each day a new quest. ARC training, however, if you live up to and surpass her expectations, you will benefit greatly. Your lovely but sadistic teacher is preparing you for the worst suffering of your foreseeable life. For however many days Koto assigns you to this regime, complete all the following requirements. Goal 1. Use your kunai to hit at least 5 targets. Objective 2. Use your shuriken to hit at least 5 targets. Goal 3. Finish your 2 hours worth of physical conditioning. Completion of Objective 1. Plus 100 XP, plus 1 Koto reputation. Completion of Objective 2. Plus 100 XP, plus 1 Koto reputation. Completion of Objective 3 to 200 EXP and 2 Koto reputation points. Failure. Koto is giving you a covert 10-day ultimatum to live up to her standards. If you don't finish goals 1 or 2 within 10 days, you'll lose reputation with Koto, and every day after that. If you don't complete Objective 3 in 10 days and every day after, you'll receive -2 rep with Koto. Are you agreeing? Why, just 10 days? I quickly selected yes and fixed my attention on the targets in front of me. I thought that because of the way I was built and the things I could do, I would be better equipped to handle anything she would throw at me. I struggled to pick up a kunai before throwing it as Kodo had taught me, with a determined gaze. Since it was my first time, it is obvious that it deviated a little way from the intended course. This could take some time. Day 30, all 10 kunai I threw hit their target's dead center, creating the dull thumping sound of metal striking wood. I pulled 10 shurikens out of my ninja tool pouch, 5 in each hand, and hurled them at the 10 different targets without pausing. When they hit, I heard a thud to let me know they had, and I looked to see that they had also landed dead center. Kudos, kunai and shuriken mastery has advanced one level. Mastery of kunai and shuriken, passive, level 45, 0.70%. Your skill with kunai and shuriken improves as you gain mastery over them. 45% more damage when using kunai and shuriken. 45% more accurate when using kunai and shuriken in combat. 90% more accurate when using kunai and shuriken outside of combat. I was startled out of my daydream by the sound of clapping, and then I saw my teacher emerge from the trees where she had been hiding. To think it only took you 5 days to hit at least 5 of the targets when you had your movements restricted to 13, she sighed as she said, now you can easily hit all targets dead center even after you have your movements restricted to 1/4. And to top it all off, you had managed to survive 2 hours of physical exercise even with the restrictions on your movements on. I merely shook my head. I wouldn't say I'm a genius but that I'm hardworking. Terms like genius rub me the wrong way. It makes me feel like I simply gained all my abilities and never actually earned them. I stated lightly, conveniently ignoring that I pretty much had just gained a lot of my abilities. Alright then, hard worker. Today will be the last day I have you on this regimen as we will be starting some shinobi training such as combat, stealth, survival training, interrogation, etc. I do expect you to continue this kind of training, though, because we wouldn't want to get rusty now, would we? She rubbed my head as she spoke. Of course not, teacher. Then get to your physical conditioning exercise, she said, nodding with a smile. I nodded and jumped up to the trees to get to a more remote but bigger practice area. It was the ideal location to run some laps because it was covered in short grass. Kodo made sure I did the fundamentals so it wouldn't negatively impact me too much, but the amount of work she assigned me left me wondering. I performed as many push-ups as I could until my arms gave out, as many sit-ups as I could until my abs cramped, as many squats as I could until my legs gave out, and as many reps of the run as I could manage. The first few days were undoubtedly difficult, but thanks to my highly adaptable gamer's body, I was able to endure this ordeal with relative ease. But despite everything, I was very grateful to my teacher. During training, she always behaved like a badass, but once it was over, she was nice. Aside. I used to believe that chakra was the cause of how young shinobi could train so hard without suffering many negative consequences. How else, I mean, could a 6-year-old Kakashi become a Chunin-level shinobi? I finished the 2 hours of physical activity I had planned for today while thinking about these and many other random things, but as I looked at one of my skills, I made the decision to keep going for a little while longer until it leveled up. Congrats, physical conditioning has gained 1 level. Level 10 of physical conditioning, passive, 1.08%. A skill called physical conditioning evaluates a user's physical fitness, health, and strength. It is a passive skill in which the user develops their physical capabilities and bodily function. 20% increase in STR passively. 20% passive increase in VIT. 20% passive dex increase. 20% passive increase in ENGY. I secretly grinned a little at the bonuses I had been given. Although I was shocked that I had acquired such a skill, it actually made sense. This ability was similar to meditation in that it greatly improved my body rather than just my mind, int and wis, and it seemed to be the perfect complement to my gamer's body. The best part was that this skill raised my ENGY stat as well because increasing chakra required both mental and physical training. The only drawback was that this skill was only level 10, despite the torturous training I had endured for a month. I could see how difficult it would be to level up this skill in the future. Regardless, I was pleased with my outcomes and the development I had made during this month. I would feel safer in the future as I got stronger. I finished my workouts and saw my teacher come in. I watched as she briefly looked at me from top to bottom. Yoru, please open your chakra for me. I flared it once I understood what she was trying to check. I don't even know how I can classify your Kekkei Genkai. Normally an individual would have to train for years to have as much as an increase in chakra as you have had, but in just 30 days, you have more than doubled the amount of chakra you had when you had before you awoke your bloodline. Let's not even begin on how drastically your stamina has increased by. I feel like I can increase the restrictions on you without increasing the restrictions on the rest of the party. She gave me a long, thoughtful look before murmuring, and unlike an Uzumaki, you weren't born with such large amounts of stamina or chakra. Instead your body seems to just grow at a ludicrous rate, giving the impression that you are just a genius, but your growth rate is obviously unnatural. I asked, wiping the traces of perspiration from my body, what do you think my bloodline is, sensei? The woman rubbed her chin in reflection and said, well, it seems like your body is able to quickly adapt to any strain placed on it. The amount that your chakra and stamina have increased by shows that your body has quickly adapted and has compensated for your previous lack of them. I'm going to have to test how much your strength and agility have increased by as well to see if they improve as drastically as the rest of your body's capabilities. She sighed and looked at me, you never cease to make things more interesting and exhausting, you know. She rubbed her forehead as she muttered, and I'll have to let Lord Danzo know as well. I didn't request to be abducted and inducted into a clandestine village organization, she said. But you are the one who agreed to all this, she retorted, puzzled. Day 30 had not yet passed, and I had completed the day's workouts. Usually, Koto would pick me up from my training and make me take a shower before preparing us a meal and discussing how to advance in my training and what it meant to be a shinobi of the leaf. Despite everyone's claims to the contrary, and despite Hidden Leaf being the strongest hidden village, it was not faultless. I still knew that no village was perfect. With that said, Koto reportedly desired a bonding activity between us as teacher and pupil. It was actually a little surprising considering how much she enjoyed seeing me writhe while I practiced, but I knew she always had a soft spot. I was currently in the bathtub. Naked. Koto and she was just washing my back, so clearly nothing was happening. Gamer's mind and a lack of teen hormones caused me to accept everything with a bland expression on my face. Koto scrubbed my back with a soapy sponge. I'm glad you agreed to this. I think that a proper student-teacher relationship should be that in which there is no awkwardness between them. I'm of the belief that it will improve training productivity if both teacher and student have fewer barriers between them. What do you suggest, since that makes sense? Before washing the soap from my back and turning me around to wash my front, the kunoichi grinned. We've been living together for about a month, but I feel like we haven't really gotten to know each other very well. Tell me something about yourself. It doesn't have to be anything specific, that I might not have known before. I paused for a moment and concluded, I don't think there is much about myself that is worth mentioning. I mean, I guess the only thing I care about right now is getting stronger. She rubbed some soap into my hair and inquired, why? I averted my eyes as she performed her duties. I merely replied, in order to survive, as Koto ran water over my head to remove the hair. She rubbed soap across my chest and inquired, and after you have enough power to survive? She dumped some water on my chest and I said, who knows? Probably live out the rest of my days as a hermit or something. The kunoichi laughed and scrubbed my legs, peeved. She gave me the soap and sponge after she washed me off again, so I smeared the soap on the sponge and scrubbed her back. I couldn't help but run my index finger over any signs of old wounds and scars there. Was it something you chose to do, or what made you decide to become a shinobi? When I was around your age, there were already signs of destabilization from the aftermath of the First Shinobi War, and everyone knew that the armistice between the 5 great countries would only last for so long before the situation completely collapsed. She remained silent for a moment before responding. I guess you could say I didn't have much of one. I poured a bucket of warm water down her back as I listened intently to her story. It didn't take her long to continue, saying, I was an orphan then, just like you are now. I couldn't remember my parents at all, and they hadn't left anything that would have allowed me to find their identities, but it didn't matter. Orphans more often than not became shinobi if only to find an easy way out of their miserable lives. It was very bad during my time as the economic situation of the hidden villages was crumbling, yet more and more money was being put into. She continued, of course many of them didn't and simply died halfway. Those who were able to make something out of themselves usually died the quickest if they weren't strong enough. It was around the time when I was 12 that the war began in full bloom, and I had already trained as a shinobi for around 7 years by that time. I was lucky to barely survive to that age, to be honest, and if it weren't for my teammate, I would have died much. Fast forward 6 years and about a year ago, they died trying to help me escape an enemy ambush. This was something I obtained at that time ago due to my negligence, and as a result, I got a mark to remember it by, she said, pausing briefly before looking and rubbing an old but visible wound on her stomach. I gave it a close inspection and gave it a poke. Can I? She smiled, pierced my stomach cleanly. I was contacted by Danzo and entered his service to aid him in protecting the leaf from the inside, which was why I was technically inactive, but I still went to the occasional recon. I worked at your orphanage for a while, but luckily the battle had taken place near the village borders and I had been saved by some patrolling ninja. I said, you would, politely, drag them to your secret hideout and ask if they wanted to do more for their village. If they declined, well, that meeting had never actually happened and they would be left alone. Koto sighed and continued, but unfortunately, that option may soon be unavailable to them. I at least wanted to give them the ability to choose something for themselves as opposed to being completely deprived of choice like how I had been during the war. Instead of asking, I said, another war. She nodded. I filled my hands with soap and ran it through her hair. Although I wasn't sure if it was good for her hair, I firmly believed she didn't care about that sort of thing. You never really had the choice to become a ninja because it was either that or living a worse life in the streets because of failing economic conditions. Due to circumstances, you eventually were able to work with Danzo and try to help out children as much as you can. In the end, you want to give them the option to choose their futures, but, I said, rinsing out her hair, you know that in the end that choice may again be taken away from them, but I was suffocating, so I was unable to enjoy the sensation when I found myself suddenly sandwiched between two big, soft things. I flailed my arms in an ineffective attempt to escape, but all I could hear was Koto's amused voice saying, sometimes being too smart isn't a good thing, you cheeky brat. And then she released me. I took a breath of much-needed fresh air and turned to face the cause of my suffering. I said blandly, those things are dangerous. We need to get to bed because tomorrow we're going to do something new and you'll need to be rested, the owner of those things said while grinning and beginning to dry me off. As she was finishing, I nodded, and I also dried her off. She then went to bed without bothering to get dressed, so I did the same even though I did put on my face mask. The item has won my affection. I then sat down on the bed in my birthday suit and asked Koto a question I had been thinking about for a while. I may have been a little fuzzy on a lot of things about Danzo, but I did remember that his root shinobi were mindless drones, whereas Koto was nothing like that. In fact, while she wasn't the most expressive person, she was also not emotionless and could express her emotions normally. She looked at me curiously as I responded, I know you've been with me long enough to notice that I have a very dulled emotional capacity, so I was just wondering, I said in response. Successful lie. Congratulations, lying has gained 1 level. She gave me a long look before answering, to be honest, you'll get a variety of answers depending on the individual. However, Lord Danzo is of the opinion that a shinobi should have impeccable control of their emotions, to the point where they could almost wear them as a mask. He believes that any decent shinobi should have enough control to feel whatever emotions they are projecting to the point where they can almost deceive themselves. She just said, don't worry about something like that for now. We will have time to work on expressing yourself more. Worry about tomorrow instead, and she went to sleep. This location is truly unique.
So this was it for today. I will continue the story in next part. Till then, we weeb offline.